Did I grab all the books? I knew I forgot one. All right, so the usual warning ahead of time. I live in a house with 2 dogs, 3 cats, 1 lizard, 2 other human beings. So they're bound to be background noises. That's just the way my life is. And yes, I also have new hair. If you noticed, my hair up till now has been green. It has been a nightmare keeping it up. So I decided to go dyeing it full black. I even got bangs. It's different. I'm definitely still getting used to it, but I do like it. What do you think? Do you like my new hair? I'm just fishing for compliments at this point. Just want a life that is worth every day exploring. My whole life. Hello, welcome to another video. This is my wrap-up video. I play a game with this because I just feel like there are a lot of TBR games out there, and for those who don't make TBRs, I think we deserve a wrap-up game. The way that I play this game is I created it myself. It is based on the Underland Chronicles series by Susan Collins. So basically like the slots that I'll land on are either a character or a place in the books, and they're different kind of games to sort of do. Anyways, if I get to the end, I can buy myself either one book, multiple books, a pretty book. It just kind of gives me a freebie to splurge a little bit on anything that I kind of want. There's no real point to it, it's just fun, that's it. They're like, I can buy shit when I want to. As you can see, I have some new equipment. Well, maybe you can't see it. I don't know what the quality's like. This is my first time using it, but I can actually have my phone hands-free now, which is fucking awesome. Which probably will also make the filming of this game a little more smooth. So, this month of November, what I read. How many books did I read? Technically 7, but I only actually read to completion 6. So we will start off, we go in the order in which I read these books. So let's go ahead and grab the first one. I have my little pile here. 2 of them were from the library, so I'll have pictures up for those. But the first book that I read is December Park by Ronald Malfi, and I did do a whole review on this book, but it was 5 stars. I fucking love this book. It was really good. Basically, it's the story about kind of a small town and these, I think it's 5 boys. I don't remember exactly how many boys there were. I think it was Angelo, there was his friend Peter, Michael, another boy, and then the new kid who comes in. Yeah, 5 boys. So there's 5 teenage boys. They're in high school. And they're kind of like that, how would I say this? Like, they're kind of the grungy kids that are rebellious, but at the same time, like, they're good kids and they listen to their parents and they go to school and, like, I don't know, I really liked it. It was very genuine the way that the boys were portrayed. But in their town, there have been kids disappearing. And the beginning of the book is basically the cops have found the body of one of the disappeared kids. So now they're like, oh my gosh, this might be a murderer on the loose, but the media doesn't want to say that. They don't want people to freak out and think that there's a serial killer. They still just think it's kids that are disappearing. Some kids have been said, well, they just ran away or whatever. But these boys basically start to investigate who's responsible behind these kids disappearing. So they kind of become this little band of mystery solving friends, and a lot of what happened in this book was it was just friendship and kind of that closeness of relationships between boys, that teenagehood. It was a coming of age story with a pretty gruesome, dark serial killer thing in the background, and I found myself very disturbed at times, terrified, oftentimes screaming at these boys of, oh my fucking god, just go tell a cop, please. But I absolutely loved it. I think the writing was amazing, and I'm definitely going to be picking up more books by Ronald Malfi because this was amazing. Okay, now we have to do the game part. So I'm very close to like getting to the end. Let me just spin the camera. Here's the board, all of it. I put it on my nice little table. So where we were last time was here because I had landed on Solivet, and well, that's kind of like a fuck you, you go back. So now I'm gonna move up 5 because I move based on the ratings that I give the books, and because I gave December Park 5 stars, I'm gonna move it up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now I'm gonna say this. I'm not doing that thing where it's like you have to hit exactly 2 to win. It's just whatever number I get, I'm just gonna get there. So, probably gonna get I'm gonna get my prize. I'm gonna be so happy. Do you see the fucking extinguisher in the background? I think you can see the fire extinguisher. All right, next book that I read Okay, this one was the one that I DNF'd. Gerald's Game by Stephen King. I did get a used copy from my local bookstore. I had never heard of this book so I joined a book club with a friend of mine who I go rock climbing with. Basically, one person in the month will pick a book, and this was the pick by the person for the month of November. I got to page like 160 something maybe, or 120 something, I don't know. But there's also a free audiobook online, and so I was also listening to that. And ultimately, I don't think that this is poorly written. Actually, I mean, Stephen King, he's a great writer, so the writing was really good, and even the premise of it was pretty poignant, but I don't know, I just didn't care really to continue with the story. I don't even really know what to say about it, because they did spoil the ending for me and tell me what happened, but essentially it's a woman and her husband who are in a cabin in the middle of Maine, and they're in the middle of having sex, and her husband has been really into the like cuffing or whatever, like cuffing her to the bed, and he cuffed her to the bed, but right as they're in the middle of it, kind of, she realizes, she's like, I don't want to do this anymore, and she tells him to stop, and he doesn't stop. But it goes a lot darker than that. I don't really want to say much more, because even like the little blurb for this book, it just says it's a game that's about to begin. It's a game to be played between husband and wife, and a game that has Jesse being innocently handcuffed to the bedposts. Then, in one horrible, violent act, Gerald is dead, and Jesse, well, she's alone and still chained to the bed. So yeah, for 100 and something pages, she was still chained to the bed, and like a lot of it is just that. It's a very small blip type of thing, and I feel like Stephen King's just very good at making small things become very large and terrifying. And I'm not saying that this is a bad book at all. I just personally wasn't feeling it at the time that I was reading it, so I DNF'd it, and then I talked about it with my book club, and it did seem like a very interesting read, but it's like 300 and some, or 400 and something pages. I didn't feel myself reading 400 pages of a woman cuffed to her bed and kind of going insane. So yeah. Okay, because I DNF'd that book, I don't progress on my board. Oh, the next book that I read was The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. When I finished this book, I did a whole video on the entire trilogy of the Poppy War. So if you want to see my full thoughts on the entire trilogy, there it is. But the one single Burning God, it was a pretty big disappointment for me as a conclusion to the trilogy. The Burning God is after a lot of things that happen with our main character Rin, and kind of it's just the accumulation of all these different very shitty situations, these wars that have started, the consequences of them ending, and the crash of an empire, I guess. And so you have a mix of civil wars that are going on, and also a foreign entity coming into another country. It's a big mix. Now, I'm not going into too many details again because I made a whole video on this, but I felt like I already kind of figured that the ending that it gave was going to happen, and I think that that's the only right way to end the trilogy. So for that, I gave it props. But in general, it was just so disappointing because I expected more from the characters. I expected even more from the plot and the magic that was in there, and it felt like a lot of it just kind of led nowhere. So yeah, The Burning God, not my favorite. I only gave it 2 stars. Do with it what you will. If you're a huge fan of that trilogy, I'm so sorry. I don't agree. You know what I just realized? I literally said that on my board, I'm not gonna do that thing where like you have to get the exact number to reach the end. But I literally my next read was 2 stars, and it's the exact number that I needed. All right, so 2 stars, and that brings me past Solivet, fuck you, and to Regalia, and I win. Woohoo! But for the sake of continuing this wrap up, we're gonna go back to the beginning where Gregor falls into the vent. The next book that I read after The Burning God was Bridge of Souls by V.E. Schwab, because honestly, after reading The Burning God, I was like, I just need something that's gonna be happy and light and easier to get through. It's a lot shorter. This is a middle grade, is it like a middle grade horror? Maybe? kind of, I guess you could call it a middle grade horror, maybe paranormal. This is the third book in the Cassidy Blake trilogy by Victoria Schwab. And it's, you know, you follow Cassidy Blake. She nearly died, or she did die, and she was saved by a ghost. And now that ghost is like her best friend. And she has been traveling with her parents, who have been, or they created a show that is basically about visiting all of the most haunted places in the world. And this book, it takes place in New Orleans, which honestly, the way this book was written just made me really want to go visit New Orleans, because it just sounded so vibrant and creepy at the same time. I really loved this one. So the first two books, I really liked them. I thought they were cute and they were nice. They lacked a little bit on the side of like character substance, I think. But this one, I think, delivered a little more, because Cassidy does make a friend in the first book called Lara. And I feel like Cassidy and Lara's friendship in this book was just a lot stronger. We already know that her ghost friend Jacob and her are very close. That's already kind of pretty well established. But even her parents sometimes felt kind of like very backgroundy. In this book, they felt a little better. And the new people you meet too, they're just so adorably quirky and interesting. And then the entity that she faces in this book, it just felt right to be a third book, to be the ending of this trilogy. And it kind of leaves it open to, you know, Cassidy will grow up and she will continue being who she is, and she'll probably grow from it. And honestly, I could almost see this turning into, you know, like maybe make it a young adult trilogy of what happened when she was more of a teen, and then make it an adult trilogy. That would be kind of cool, though I doubt that would ever happen, but you can kind of fill in your own blanks with it. So I gave Bridge of Souls, how much was it? 4.75 stars. The only reason it didn't get the full 5 is because this third book still had as many Harry Potter references as the other books, and that just, it kind of bothered me a little bit. I was like, it just felt a little too much like it was trying to draw a parallel between Harry Potter and this book, and I was like, I feel like it could be very good just on its own without all those references. So yeah, 4.75, which on my game rounds up to 5, so I will move 5 spaces. All right, so we are at the vent, and we're gonna move 5 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, there's nothing there. The little dotted line is just if I had landed on temp, then there is like a thing to do with temp. What does it say? Roll a 20 die if 10 or below, whatever. It's like a game of chance, and if I had won it, then I could move up to here, but here, there's nothing, so we're kind of safe, sort of. The next book I read was The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias. So this was a book of the month book. I have since, I think it was after, not this one, but the one after that I canceled book of the month, just because most of the time I don't see books that I'm really interested in, and I've only maybe read like one book from it that I've really enjoyed, which was Razorblade Tears, which was why I picked this book, because it said fans of S.A. Cosby would really enjoy this. I don't fully agree. So this book is about a man who basically has lost everything. His daughter died from cancer, his wife left him, he's in an extreme amount of debt, and he has a friend who's been kind of trying to help him with that debt, but kind of just handed him a gun and said, yeah, go kill some people for me and I'll give you money. And that turns into getting involved with the Mexican cartel. Point is, this book is very depressing. There wasn't a single moment that felt happy, which is fair, you know, some books just have that atmosphere, and that's okay. I think that it did a really good job with that. It's a very sad and a very like life sucks kind of book. It also delves into topics of racism and culture, and you know, a lot of like the fallacy of the American dream. I think a lot of Americans know that by now, that it's fucking utter bullshit. But the reason that I don't think this book really worked that well for me, that it was just a 3-star, is that there was a lot of repetition. So our main character, Mario, you know, he's lost a lot, but he often continually references back to his wife's skin and his daughter. And, you know, I get it. Like, he just lost his family and you're going to constantly revisit that stuff. But sometimes it felt a little too much. Like, I don't know. I was like, I feel like you don't have to repeat it that much for me to understand that this man misses his wife and misses his child. Also, I feel like there were some paranormal elements in this book, but it was never quite clear. And sometimes things were brought up that were never revisited again. So oftentimes I felt kind of confused and like the author had an idea and put it in, but never really continued with it or thought to elaborate on that. And that I think was a little unfortunate because yes, this book could have had really good kind of paranormal undertones, but it just didn't follow through. Yeah. The ending though, I think was pretty epic. I didn't see it coming for sure. I should have though, but I didn't. I wonder if you've read this book, did you see the ending coming? Because I didn't. Okay, so I'm over here and I move 3 spaces. 1, oh, 2, 3. No, I'm safe. Oh my gosh, I thought I was gonna land on the tentacles and then have to go back to the waterway. That's good. I'm in the safe zone. Woohoo! Okay, the next book that I read is Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chupeco. I didn't realize that Rin Chupeco was the same author as, I think it's The Bone Witch. I might be totally wrong and be saying this and people are gonna yell at me, but I think she's the same author as The Bone Witch. I know that she had previously written some kind of fantasy romance series. I did not know initially when I was interested in reading this book and added it to my TBR that she had written a fantasy romance series, trilogy, I don't know. But when I saw the book, Silver Under Nightfall, I was immediately drawn to this little like blurb that I put underneath saying, this book is great for fans of Castlevania. I vehemently disagree. I really disagree because, so if you don't know, I do really love Castlevania. I think I did a video on it. It was like one of my earlier videos and I don't think I expressed myself very well in it, but Castlevania is a Netflix animated show that has concluded and I absolutely adored it. It is bloody, it is gory, it is full of vampires and monsters and politics. And the part that I personally really like is that there is eventually, I wouldn't say a romance because it's not romantic. Well, not that it's not romantic, but it's not your typical romance, right? But there's a couple, a power couple, and I love it. And you don't get all the like wooing in between of how they seduced each other and oh my goodness, they're so shy around one another and blah, blah, blah. No, they just are together at some point and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. And I love that shit. I absolutely love it when there's a couple that banters with each other and they work well together and they just love each other. So what I thought Silver Under Nightfall was gonna be is, yes, I knew there were gonna be vampires, but I thought it was gonna be very, like a lot more heavily political, and I was hoping that there would be a power couple in it, like in Castlevania, but that was kind of mostly what I expected. And also a lot of adventure and a lot of like small town corrupt leaders that are leading their people into chaos, right? Because that's a lot of what happened in Castlevania. This book was not that, and I am very disappointed. So, Silver Under Nightfall is about a young boy, I think he's 19, but he's a vampire hunter, and he has this whole tragic backstory of how his mom died right as she was giving birth to him, and he was cut out of her stomach, whatever. His father is a duke asshole who hates him or whatever. Basically, this young man, Remy, he gets involved with a vampire empress. So there are different courts of vampires, which I guess is supposed to, you know, add some political-ishness to the book. But I personally was like, yeah, okay, courts, whatever. They just hang out with each other. There was no real substance to the political side of things. Anyways, he gets involved with, I can't even fucking say their names. I think that Zidane was like a 900-year-old vampire duke guy who is from the third court. And then there's, I forgot her name, but it was also like a whatever. It's kind of, they sound like Chinese names. I did listen to the book on audio, I will say that. So that's how I kind of know how they're pronounced. But yes, the girl she's a fourth court vampire, daughter of the queen, like she's an actual born vampire. But anyways, the Duke guy, Zidane, and the girl, Xiao or something like that, I think is her name. They are a betrothed couple, but they want to bring in our little vampire hunter Remy into their little thing, which, you know, more power to it. You know, there was a lot of gay vampires. I mean, at one point I was just giggling. I was like, fucking gay vampires everywhere, which is great, you know, representation. But I felt like the story lacked so much in something that could have been amazing, because so much of the focus was on this young boy trying to figure out if he even liked dick. I think I went in expecting something like Castlevania because, again, it was said that it would be for fans of Castlevania, and then it was nothing like it. It is very much a fantasy romance with vampires, and that's mostly it. So if that's your thing, I'm sure you'll love it. I did give it 2.75 stars because it was still an enjoyable-ish read. It wasn't hard to read. It wasn't poorly written or anything. So yeah, ultimately that rounds up to a 3. So I will be moving 3 spaces, and I think that puts me in another safe zone. I think the beginning of my board is quite light on the game prompt things. So 1, 2, 3. Yep, another safe spot. The last book that I read in November, which honestly, such a good book to end November with, was The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This book is a ride. I can 100% see why there's a lot of praise for it. So I will say though, the very beginning of it, it was a little rough. I think it was like the first 2-3 chapters. I was so confused. I was like, what is even happening? What is this perspective that I'm getting? What are these random things that I'm being told about a character, or even from the character's perspective? It was rough at first. I almost DNF'd it. I was almost like, at first, honestly, I was like, this seems like a book that's for smart people, and I'm not that kind of person. I was like, maybe I have to understand subtext and things. I was like, this is too much work. So I almost DNF'd it, but I didn't, and my goodness, I'm so glad that I didn't. This book is incredible. So I think that the back of it is the best, or the little blurb is the best way to be introduced to it, to have it summarized as to what it's about, because if I talk too much, I feel like I might give something away. So it says, in a boarded up house on a dead-end street at the edge of the wild Washington woods lives a family of 3. A teenage girl who isn't allowed outside, not after last time. A man who drinks alone in front of his TV, trying to ignore the gaps in his memory. And a house cat who loves napping and reading the Bible. That's all I really want to give, because it's so important to follow those 3 characters and to be left guessing. I thought that I knew. I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is totally what's happening. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that is not what is happening. All the way up to the end is just reveals and surprises and amazing twists. And holy shit is all I'm gonna say. Also, I did start listening to the audiobook because it was available on Libby, and I think that the narrator did a great job, but reading it physically is just as enjoyable. So yeah, it's a masterwork in perspective. Just read it. If you want something that is going to keep you on your toes and it's pretty fucking dark. It definitely deals a lot with trauma. So be warned, maybe look up some trigger warnings with this book because it's pretty fucking intense, but I highly recommend it. It is a horror. And at first I thought it was more of like a mystery thriller, but the more I read it, I was like, nope, this is a horror. Fucking amazing. I gave it 5 stars. It was my favorite book of November. Moving 5 spaces. So we're gonna pass through the labyrinth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Shit, I forgot what the fuck this means. Does this mean I get to move up 2 spaces? Pretty sure that's what that means. Right? Hold on. Pretty sure there's no actual like little game to this. Nope, it's just a free bump up. Damn, lucky me. 1, 2. Haha. Or I could have just... Nice. Well, I'm getting to the end of my game really fucking quick. All right, well, that's everything that I read in the month of November. That's also my little wrap-up game. Nothing really interesting happened. Again, I'm considering reworking my board a little bit, It's a first draft. Listen, it's not supposed to be super wild and crazy and amazing, but I do hope you enjoyed it. And please let me know what you read in the month of November. If you have read any of the books that I read, I am more than happy to discuss and talk about them more than I already have. So yeah, thank you for hanging out. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye.
I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this